Northern Ireland and the far north of England. Top temperature 25 degrees for the southeast, warmer still as we head towards the weekend. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A92 Tay Road Bridge is closed to high-sided vehicles because of strong winds. In North Lanarkshire on the A725, there are 2 lanes closed westbound at the A8 Shorehead flyover after an accident with queues towards there. The A1 in Cambridge is closed each way between the A47 at Wansford and the A43 south of Stamford after an accident with long delays towards the closure and as you divert. On the M5 in Worcestershire, 2 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 4A from Droitwich to the M42 causing queues. Trains have been stopped between Droitwich Spa and Worcester Foregate Street because of a signalling problem, and there's no service between Richmond and Bedford because of overhead line problems. The M2 in Kent's blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 6 and 5 from Faversham to Sittingbourne causing queues. In Devon, the A38's closed eastbound from the A383 Goodston junction to the A382 at Drum Bridges after an accident causing queues, and Skybus flights to and from the Isles of Scilly are on hold because of poor weather.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Prince Harry also revealed that he wouldn't bring his wife Meghan Markle back to the UK over safety concerns.
Let's talk to royal correspondent Michael Cole.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Ellie. I mean, they live in California. I'm not sure what the murder rate is there, but that's a more dangerous place than Britain's at any time of the day. And of course, he compromised his own safety when he said in his book, Spare, his autobiography, which was Ghost Britain, that he'd personally killed 25 Taliban when he was serving with the British Army in Afghanistan. Well, that painted a target for life on the back of himself and his family, which was a very unwise thing for him to do. The other thing which struck me, it was that he invoked the name of the late Queen, saying that he'd had several conversations with his grandmother, and she'd been very, very supportive in his battle. He sees himself, and it's a word he's used, as a dragon slayer against the popular press, the tabloid press, and he's continuing with that. Of course, his brother, Prince William, has settled, but also in the programme was Hugh Grant. Now, Hugh Grant also has settled, as indeed did I, when I received an apology from News Group. I believe in a free and unfettered press. Newspapers are having a bad time at the moment, losing circulation, losing advertising. Young people don't read newspapers. And so I felt that the right thing to do was to settle. I didn't want to take punitive action against newspapers.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well. It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 8th of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo in the studio for Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning. So, has order been restored? The Labour government is claiming victory over riots that, thankfully, didn't happen last night as thousands of pro-migration protesters took to the empty streets across Britain. Curious, Ray Addison has more.
10 arrests amid scenes of violence and disorder here in Croydon as Mayor of London Sadiq Khan praises police.
Elsewhere, the King's concern. King Charles asked the government for daily updates on the protests as tensions remain high across the country.
And doctors are at breaking point. The General Medical Council has warned that a third of GPs are struggling to cope with their workload. Do you have any sympathy for them, and why is it happening?
And I've had my fair share of experiences with them this week. The airline, EasyJet, they want to recruit over 50s to their cabin crew, as apparently middle-aged men, or people at least, are craving a new challenge. Have you ever changed career later on in life?
Good Good morning, Andrew Pearce here in Edinburgh for the festival, which is the biggest arts festival of its kind in Europe. I'll be talking to acts, comedians, and I'm also going to be talking to politicians about why the Scottish National Party is losing its vice-like grip on Scotland. We've been in power for nearly 15 years, and why is reform doing so well north of the border? But first, we're going to get the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. Police have launched dawn raids in London this morning to round up suspected rioters as officers hunt down violent protesters. Thousands of counter-protesters rallied in cities and towns across England yesterday after a week of disorder. More than 1,000 police officers were deployed in the city as the Met Police made 15 arrests across the City of London. In Croydon, 10 people were arrested for offences including assault on an emergency worker, and in Waltham Forest they arrested 2 people for possession of an offensive weapon. However, gatherings that took place in North London, Bristol and Newcastle were largely peaceful, with counter-protesters chanting refugees are welcome here. Police had been braced for further violence, with thousands of officers deployed and more than 100 events anticipated. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has praised police forces across the country for how they dealt with the unrest last night.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police.
Stormont's been recalled following rioting in Belfast, which police say involves a parliamentary element. Members of the Legislative Assembly will meet today to discuss a motion condemning criminal damage and targeting of businesses in recent days. 6 people have been arrested for race-related hate crimes and disorder across Belfast. The police service of Northern Ireland came under sustained attack from petrol bombs, masonry and bricks in the city on Monday night. And patients in England with an inherited blood disorder are to become the first in Europe to benefit from a gene therapy costing well over £1 million a shot. The treatment, called Casgevy, uses molecular scissors to disable a faulty gene that causes the debilitating condition beta thalassemia. Currently, people severely affected by the disease need blood transfusions every few weeks because their own red blood cells are unable to carry enough oxygen around the body. But in trials, 90% of people were effectively cured by a single treatment. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Tatiana, and good morning to you at home. Welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News, with me, Ben Leo, in for Andrew Pearce, who, as you just saw, is in Edinburgh, and, of course, Bev Turner.
Very good morning. So what an interesting 24 hours. Thousands of pro-migrant protesters took to the streets across the country last night in a show of solidarity against what was called, of course, during the week, far-right protesters.
Yes, police forces were braced for more than 100 demonstrations across the country, including in the likes of LGBT capital Brighton, Walthamstow in London, which is a very low white population. Interesting sites for the far right. And many businesses, in response, closed early over fears of violence.
Now, we have a lot to get through this morning because I don't know about you, but my suspicion radar is going off the charts here. There is unanimous agreement on the front pages of all the papers this morning, regardless of their normal political leanings, Daily Mail, Daily Express, The Mirror, The Guardian, that last night was about anti-hate marchers facing down the thugs. I mean, even the Daily Mail's drunk the sort of woke Kool-Aid this morning. And yes, we are delighted, of course, that there was no violence. But I, for one, didn't think there was ever going to be any violence last night. So what exactly is going on? This is what I tweeted earlier in the evening yesterday. I basically said, I don't know about you, but I don't feel that there's going to be a huge amount amount of uprising this evening. I said I think that some of the individuals who were the knuckleheads who were going to be bored by now, and I don't discriminate, there were knuckleheads on both sides, by the way. Some of them are scared of going to prison, yes. Some of them have had a telling off from their mothers or their community leaders, and I might be wrong, I said, but I think there's a lot of fear-mongering in the air, and I think some of those youngsters particularly who were wrongly characterised as somehow being political far-right probably ripped their Stone Island jeans and have gone home to carry on waxing their eyebrows.
So the big question is, where did this report, this conjecture of 100 riots that are going to be smashing Britain, where did it come from? Well, it came from an anonymous Telegram group. A screenshot was doing the rounds online yesterday and the day before, saying that certain sites across Britain, as I mentioned, Brighton, an LGBT capital of Europe at least, which has no far-right contingent, Walthamstow, 34% white, all these cities, many of which don't have far-right contingents, they were going to be targeted. By the admission of Nick Lowles, the chief exec of Hope Not Hate this morning, it was a hoax. It was a hoax. He said, yes, the list was a hoax, but just look at the front pages of today's papers. An anti-racist message is being transmitted to millions of homes this morning. Interesting. So the pro-migrant agenda is being pushed regardless of the fact that reports of 100 riots were a hoax. But I want to know who organised that fake Telegram message.
And if you don't know what Telegram is, because it's not the kind of social media that we talk about regularly, it's like Twitter, but it's a little bit more niche. It doesn't have quite as many users, but it's known for amassing groups, little subcultures of people who want to talk to each other. Now, of course, the response to this has been interesting. We've had Labour clearly claiming victory. Anna Soubry was tweeting this morning, saying it's relief. And, of course, you look at the front page of the papers and you would say that it is. She said, is it just me? But suddenly it feels like we've got our country back. Swift, effective action from government and police working in mutual respect. Racism and thuggery called out in peaceful protests that united communities. It's like the grown-ups are back in the room. Now, listen, genuine grievances about too much migration too quickly, which mean you can't see your GP or get a house, those still exist. And we still have to have that conversation. The tiny number, Ben, I don't know about you, but the tiny number of true, what would be defined as far-right racists is minuscule in this country. And most people are out because they're angry, because they've got no money and they feel hopeless.
It's interesting, I was at home this week, I had a few days off, I had a busy last week, and I was watching all this unfold, the riots, Keir Starmer's press conferences, I was watching it unfold as a viewer at home. And at the start of it all, Keir Starmer looks like a rabbit or a deer in headlights, wide-eyed, panicky at his press conferences. Sir Mark Rowley, the Met Commissioner, again, panicked, rattled, grabbing the microphone out of a journalist's hand when asked about two-tier policing. And then suddenly this 100 riots information does the rounds, and suddenly socialist worker, stand up to racism crowds all gather with their pre-made placards and everything's fine again. Yeah. Labour say they've got control of the situation. But as you said, that sentiment still stands.
And what we talked about, online disinformation, online misinformation, we've got a lot to get through between now and midday. Let's go to GBNews' South East of England reporter Ray Addison, who joins us now in Croydon. Good morning, Ray. So there was a huge amount of build-up yesterday all over the media. I have to say I saw a lot of reporters from Sky News looking, frankly, slightly disappointed that there wasn't action in these towns. I was one of the people sat at home going, it was never going to kick off. It was a lot of fuss about nothing. But there have been some arrests down there, haven't there?
Yeah, I mean, I've taken a look at some of the arrest reports from around the country, and I think, although I could stand corrected, that this is where the most arrests took place. There was 10 arrests here in Croydon last night, 15 in the whole of London, and across the country I've just seen a smattering of 1 or 2 arrests at different events. Police saying around 50 young people turned up here to North End. It's the main high street, it's the shopping centre here in this part of Croydon, but they were saying they weren't far-right demonstrators, they weren't counter-protesters, either. They were just simply people intent on anti-social behaviour. They were throwing bottles at police, setting off fireworks as well. I spoke to residents and asked them what they saw.
Wrap-ups here and there, but obviously those are people trying to stir stuff up. But overall, the protesters who were going against the violence as well.
It was crazy and scary. I came out from the house just for like 5 minutes, walk to around here, and I turned around because, I don't know, and I kept looking out the window to see if it comes any closer. It's It's terrifying, to be honest.
I think it's a complete catastrophe what's going on still. I just hope that the people can find some kind of common sense in it.
Fine.
So it's interesting, Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has issued a statement this morning saying that he's praising the police and praising peaceful protesters. And he said, we've seen appalling violence and disorder in towns and cities across the country in recent days, but there was no repeat in our capital overnight. I would hasten to suggest that police officers here met police officers who were having bottles thrown at them and fireworks set off in their direction may disagree with that, although I haven't seen the full statement, but it does seem to ignore what happened here in Croydon overnight. So violence here, this was one of the most violent scenes in the capital, or possibly the only majorly violent scene in the capital, but for now all is peaceful.
OK, thank you, Ray. Thank you so much. What have we talked about this week? Facial recognition. There's been a very strong Ofcom statement warning social media companies to clamp down on misinformation, online censorship. There's a picture emerging here, isn't there?
Authoritarianism. And also, the papers this morning, the way from left and right, the way they all aligned with the same message and the same pictures from the socialist worker, stand up to racism. Do you know what it reminded me of? COVID, the propaganda during COVID. And we're going to touch on a story in The Telegraph today where a COVID disinformation unit, a government unit, has now been rebranded to tackle so-called far-right conjecture.
Funny that. Let's go to national security expert Anthony Glees. Morning, Anthony.
Good morning.
Right. We can see a picture emerging here, as Ben just said, about where this all goes next. Now, you're a national security expert, so we know now that this Telegram list was a hoax of these 100 protests. How easy is it for the government to find out who started that rumour?
Well, you're kind enough to invite me onto GB News, and I always accept your kind invitation whenever I can. But you invite me to speak to you using my professional experience, and I'm somebody who's been hard on Islamism, hard on extremism, hard on right-wing extremism for the whole of my career, and I'm not going to change my colours now. I am one of those people who said it on TV last night. Last night was a make or break night for Sir Keir Starmer and for Sir Trevor Rowley and for our system in this country. And the truth is that it did not break us. It may have made us. That doesn't mean the underlying issues that led some people to engage in rioting have gone away. There does need to be a serious conversation about, and I'm, for one, very happy to have that conversation at the right time. Remember, we have a trial. We have a trial that must not be prejudiced. It's okay when something happens straight away and people like me are asked to comment and nobody really knows, and we try and provide some context. Once there's been an arrest and a charge brought, then we all of us have to shut up, because otherwise we prejudice the trial, and it means that innocent people could go, guilty people could go free. So we have to be very, very careful about what we say. There is a conversation to be had about immigration to the United Kingdom. But equally, we have to see what we see and understand what we see. And what we saw in the rioting included people who were wearing swastikas, people who hurled flares at a statue of Sir Winston Churchill.
Anthony, they've rightly been banged up. The front page of the Sun today, nailed and jailed, 3-year terms for some of those.
I'm with the Sun on this.
I need to ask you though about the situation last night. The country was bracing itself for 100 riots across the country. It was a hoax Telegram message. Even people from Hope Not Hate on the left of the argument are saying so. So does the government, bearing in mind the police have spent probably millions of pounds getting choppers up across cities, extra officers on the ground, do we need to find out where this hoax came from?
Look, Ben, you say it's a hoax. I don't know. We have probably the best security and intelligence community in the world in this country. The government is not going to say these things if they're not true. If you believe that, you believe in Elon Musk, you believe in, the moon's made of blue cheese. So we have to accept that these messages went out. The logical explanation for why last night did not see the same sort of appalling rioting that we've seen in this country. And remember, people like me, the centre-right in this country, we believe in law and order. We don't believe in disorder and rioting. So we want a smack of firm government. And when we see the smack of firm government, we're the last people who are going to say, well, we don't want it. We don't want the cops in charge. We don't want CCTV. I do want it, whether it's fly tipping or rioting, whatever. If you've done wrong, I want you...
Well, Anthony, I want firm government, but I don't want it as an excuse to bring in stuff like facial recognition, stamping out online talk and censorship, bringing down social media networks. I don't want any of that. It just reminds me of COVID again.
Ben, we just disagree. In my experience, the sort of country that we are today means that law and order must be maintained. You cannot assault a cop and get away with it. You cannot blow up a police van. You cannot set fire to a Holiday Inn, shutting the fire escape door.
Yeah, Anthony,
this is not funny. So what people, and you've allowed me to say it on your programme before, what people of the centre-right should be doing is sticking up for law and order, standing up with our
really
cops.
interesting to hear that, Anthony. Thank you so much, national security expert Anthony Glees. And I find it absolutely fascinating that those people who consider themselves to be old-fashioned traditional conservatives are calling for a digital prison, because that's what this is. Right, we're going to be going over to Edinburgh soon because Andrew Pearce is there for a Fringe Festival show. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, look, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Andrew Pearce with you here in Edinburgh for the festival. It is the biggest arts festival of its kind in Europe, but it's a time of great political upheaval. We had exam results published yesterday in Scotland, another decline, the NHS in crisis, the Scottish National Party in crisis, and the Tory party in crisis here too, having their own leadership contest with 6 candidates. I'm joined now by the Falkirk Tory councillor, James, tell me your surname. Bundy, with a very nice tart, which I'm told is an English tartan tie.
Lindsay tartan, so English origins.
Very good. Is the reason the Scottish Party is down to 5 MPs out of 57 north of the border because of the continuing crisis in the English Tory party in England?
Well, I think that was certainly a factor, having that tie to us going up to the election, but it was also what were we offering the people of Scotland. Whilst we retained 5 MPs, our vote share halved in Scotland, and in the Central Belt we got defeated in about 16 out of 18 seats to Reform Party. UK-wide, we lost 26 deposits, 16 of those were in Scotland. So this was not a good election for the Scottish Conservatives. Our vote was concentrated in 5-6 areas of Scotland. We won 5 seats, so it looks good on paper, but look below the surface and it was not a good election.
Why have the Tory party lost their way, Councillor Bundy, in Scotland? What's gone wrong?
Well, our offering for the past 10 years has been no to IndyRef 2, and that was popular when the SNP looked like they were going to push for a second independence referendum. They're on decline, and voters in Scotland know that, so people are asking themselves, why should we vote for the party who's going to oppose the SNP when the SNP is already on decline?
We're in Edinburgh for this amazing festival, an extraordinary festival, and yet the city is gripped by a bin strike. What are they thinking of? This is another indictment of the local Labour Council, and yet again the Tories aren't making anything out of it.
Well, we want Edinburgh looking at its best for the festival because it is, as you said earlier, the largest international festival in Europe, and it is a great opportunity for Scotland to showcase herself on the world stage. It's not often you can go to one building and get a book launch about the Stuart monarchy and then next door have the upcoming comedy, and it's people from across the UK and further coming together to celebrate the best of Scotland. Having bin strikes that make Edinburgh look ugly is not what we want. Edinburgh is a beautiful city, and it's time for people to come together and get these bin strikes sorted so Edinburgh can look at its most beautiful.
This is Councillor James Bundy, one of the youngest Tory councillors in Scotland. I'm here for the Edinburgh Festival. We're going to go to the weather shortly, and I have great news for you. It is not going to rain in Scotland today. I think it's because it shines on the righteousness. I'm Andrew Pearce with you in Edinburgh. Let's go to the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather forecast for this morning, and it's a damp and humid start to your Thursday. We've got some heavy rain on the cards through the day today, but brighter signs as we go into Friday. Taking a look at the picture out there this morning, quite a grey, damp start across Wales, southwest England, and that rain spreads its way in across Northern Ireland and northern counties of England as well. As we go into the afternoon, some of that rain will turn quite heavy across these northern counties of England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. We could get the odd rumble of thunder. Largely dry towards the southeast though, some sunny breaks, but you can see how humid it is across the map. Temperatures of 21 to 24 degrees, feeling really quite uncomfortable out there with all that going on. Let's take a closer look then as we zoom across into Scotland. Through Thursday evening, still staying dry across the Northern Isles. As we come down into mainland Scotland, quite a lot of rain for the evening rush hour, so do take care if you're heading out and about. Moving southwards into northern England, some heavy pulses here denoted by the yellows and reds on the chart there. A lot of low cloud for Wales, outbreaks of rain and drizzle, similarly for the southwest of England as well. Somewhat drier further south and east though. Those temperatures staying on the warm side, and it stays warm and humid as we go through Thursday night. Further bits and pieces of rain to come, mainly out towards our western hills and coasts, but still some showers working their way eastwards. A lot of low cloud out there as well. Some clear skies towards the end of the night further north. Temperatures somewhat fresher here, but an uncomfortable night further south. 18 or 19 degrees really will feel uncomfortable first thing on Friday. Now, we get rid of that rain fairly early on across the southeast, some cloud to follow on behind. But actually, for England and Wales, a much brighter day to come on Friday. Much less humid, much more in the way of sunshine, feeling quite pleasant. And some sunny spells too further north, but a scattering of showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England. Top temperature, 25 degrees for the southeast, warmer still as we head towards the weekend. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers. sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A92 is closed to high-sided vehicles over the Tay Road Bridge because of strong winds. In North Lanarkshire on the A725, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed westbound at the A8 Shorehead flyover at Whifflet after an accident causing queues. The A1 in Cambridgeshire is closed each way after an accident overnight between the A47 at Wansford and the A43 south of Stamford. There are long delays towards the closure and as you divert. On the M5 in Worcestershire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound between junctions 5 and 4A from Droitwich to the M42 after an accident. It's taken nearly half an hour in the queues. Trains have been stopped between Droitwich Spa and Worcester Foregate Street because of a signalling problem, and train services are suspended between Bedford and Ridgemont because of overhead line problems. In Devon, the A38 is closed eastbound from the Goodston Junction to Drum Bridges after an accident with queues towards Exeter. And Skybus flights to and from the Isles of Scilly are on hold because of poor weather.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
you made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 8th of August, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, Ben Leo here in London, and Andrew Pearce in Scotland.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well. Order restored. The Labour government is claiming victory over riots that thankfully didn't happen last night, as thousands of pro-migration protesters took to empty streets across Britain.
But the King is still worried. King Charles has asked the government for daily updates on the so-called protests, as tensions apparently remaining high across Britain.
And Stormont's swift response. The Northern Ireland Assembly is recalled today to bring an end to the disorder. Dougie Beattie has the latest.
The Chief Constable is now meeting with ministers in the Executive. The Assembly will meet at midday to discuss his findings.
And the airline EasyJet wants to recruit over 50s to their cabin crew. Apparently, middle-aged people crave a new challenge and, in my opinion, are probably better at the job. Have you changed career later on in life? Let us know.
And I'm Andrew Pearce here in Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, hosting the Europe's biggest arts festival. I'm going to be talking to a number of politicians, and I'm also going to be talking to my old sparring partner, Kevin Maguire from the Daily Mirror. Can Labour claim any credit for the fact there were no riots in England last night? There have been no riots in Scotland at all. All that coming up after the news headlines, of course, with Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. Police have launched dawn raids in London this morning to round up suspected rioters as officers hunt down violent protesters. Thousands of counter-protesters rallied in cities and towns across England after a week of disorder. More than 1,000 police officers were deployed in London as the Met Police made 15 arrests. In Croydon, 10 people were arrested, and in Waltham Forest, 2 people were arrested for possession of an offensive weapon. However, gatherings that took place in North London and Bristol and Newcastle were largely peaceful, with counter-protesters chanting, "Refugees are welcome here." Police had been braced for further violence, with thousands of officers deployed and more than 100 events anticipated. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has praised police forces across the country for how they dealt with the unrest.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police.
Policing Minister Dame Diana Johnson told GB News she's optimistic following police responses last night.
What we saw last night were the vast majority, the law-abiding people of this country, expressing a view that we live in a tolerant Britain. We are law-abiding people. We do not like to see this disorder, this violence, this criminality on our streets. So I think it's that. I think the public revulsion at what happened, the police being on our streets, providing that security and safety, and then the swift justice. I think it's a combination of things that makes me cautiously optimistic about how this is now being dealt with.
Meanwhile, it's understood the King has asked for daily updates on protests planned around the UK. Following the Southport stabbings, King Charles is said to be engaging privately in the issues the unrest has generated. The King has a record of involvement in issues around the community cohesion and interfaith dialogue. Meanwhile, reports of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK in the first half of this year have reached another record high, according to figures from a Jewish security charity. The Community Security Trust says it registered almost 2,000 cases in the first half of the year, compared to 964 over the same period last year. The charity, which provides protection for British Jews against anti-Semitic attacks, says it's the highest total ever reported to CST in the first 6 months of any year. Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill says it's important for political leaders to speak with one voice following scenes of violent disorder on the streets of Belfast. Stormont's been recalled following rioting in Belfast, which police say involves a parliamentary element. Members of the Legislative Assembly will meet this morning to discuss a motion condemning criminal damage and targeting of businesses in recent days. 6 people have been arrested for race-related hate crimes and disorder across Belfast. The Police Service of Northern Ireland came under sustained attack from petrol bombs and bricks in the city on Monday night. There have been several arrests in recent days, including a boy as young as 14 years old linked to allegations of race-related hate crimes, disorder and rioting. In other news, patients in England with an inherited blood disorder are to become the first in Europe to benefit from a gene therapy costing well over £1 million a shot. The treatment, called Casgevy, uses molecular scissors to disable a faulty gene that causes the debilitating condition beta thalassemia. Currently, people severely affected by the disease need blood transfusions every few weeks because their own red blood cells are unable to carry enough oxygen around the body. But in trials, 90% of people were effectively cured by a single treatment. And a special set of stamps is being issued marking the history of the Tower of London. Royal Mail has partnered with historic royal palaces on images of the 10 stamps. The main set of stamps includes the White Tower, Tower Green and the King's House. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
10:06, Ben and Bev with you on Britain's Newsroom. Andrew Pearce, of course, is up in Scotland as well at the Edinburgh Fringe. So much to get through this morning. Fascinating, isn't it, Bev? This array of front pages across the media, all aligned from left to right. The Guardian, the Daily Mail, even towing the line. Interesting. The Sun front page, actually, if we can get it up, nailed and jailed. Naming and shaming some of the thugs who were involved in rioting this week. One got a 3-year jail term for punching a cop during violence in Southport. Excellent, swift justice within a day or two, banged up. The question begs then, why are those people caught on CCTV at Manchester Airport some weeks ago? Do you remember that incident? Smashing police officers in the face, breaking a young officer's nose into pieces. Why are they still on bail doing press conferences, playing the victim, saying that they're going to sue the hell out of Greater Manchester Police? If we can deal with people this quickly, white, working class, far-right thugs in jail for 3 years within days, why can't that be sorted out?
We are delighted there were no riots last night. Just to be clear, I didn't think there was ever going to be any riots last night. I think the whole thing was completely blown out of all proportion. We don't have that many people in this country who feel sufficiently racist that they want to go out and set migrant hotels alight. And that is a good thing, let's be honest. A tiny minority of idiots. Most of them got arrested. Police did a good job. Feel sorry for the police. But let's not all pretend that a few thousand pink-haired people who make their own muesli standing on the streets of Brighton means that this issue is all sorted. You know who's been interesting this morning? He's a very wise man, Jeremy Clarkson. Well, Jeremy Clarkson has said, I'm surrounded by farmers and plasterers and brickies and butchers, and all I hear all day long is that there is too much immigration. He said, but if they say this out loud or if they go on a march, they are told by the London elite that they are far-right extremists or racist thugs. For the most part, he says, they're not. They're just people who know that they have to shut up when the last post is played and that a cheese rolling down a hill is funny. And he said, the fact is that 4 million people voted for reform. And he said, and more than that, voted for Brexit. And Keir Starmer is upsetting them. He doesn't use that phrase. He says he's annoying them by labelling them as modern-day Hitlers. And he says, I therefore suggest that both he and his friends at the BBC calm down the rhetoric, or we could be heading for some serious trouble. And he's absolutely right.
Absolutely. I just want to bring you one quick tweet as well from Nick Lowles from Hope Not Hate, the far-left campaign group, who, amongst other things, spread misinformation during the past week about the riots, saying that a Muslim person had been the victim of an acid attack. A complete lie, of course. But he also admitted this morning, very interestingly, saying that the list of 100 sites across Britain that were going to be targeted by far-right rioters last night was a hoax. He's admitted that. He said it doesn't matter because it still allowed us to dominate the front pages with our pro-migration agenda. But the question begs, again, where did this hoax come from? Did the police, who have spent millions of pounds on extra policing last night on helicopters, have they looked into where this hoax came from? Who started it? Because you would have thought if they were going to embark on such an expensive and costly operation to combat the far right across 100 sites across Britain, they would have made damn sure that it was actually happening.
In Northern Ireland, Stormont is recalled today to discuss the recent violence. We got a lot to talk about, haven't we, this morning? GBNews reporter Dougie Beattie is there from Stormont. What's going on there this morning, Dougie?
Well, good morning, Bev. Basically, the Chief Constable has met with the executive this morning in the castle just down below. They are basically the Cabinet of Northern Ireland. He's briefed them on the security situation. Last night we had minor problems in Northern Ireland. There was about 5 arrests, and the Chief Constable has asked for help from other police forces. Now, at about 12 noon today, the Assembly will sit and they will discuss what he has said. But, I mean, really what they're talking about is condemning the violence. Everybody does that. They're talking about a racial equality bill. But what they're not talking about is how they are going to address the problems that is breaking out in these working class areas. And there's only one reason that it is happening, is the amount of immigration that is undocumented immigration, mostly young men that are being put into these areas, not just in Northern Ireland, but right across Ireland, indeed parts of the UK. And no politician seems to want to address this. So I will be watching eagerly today to see, is there anything to actually move these young men out of those areas and into other areas of Northern Ireland?
Okay, thank you, Doogie. We might be talking to you a little bit later. Right, let's cross to Andrew Pearce in Edinburgh. It's a very sort of, I would say international show, but I don't mean that. I mean a very regional show. We've got Doogie there in Northern Ireland. Andrew Pearce is in Edinburgh. Why, Andrew, and who have you found? Oh, no, I think I recognise that face.
I think you probably needs no introduction. My old sparring partner here, Kevin Maguire from the Daily Mirror. This is the month of the Edinburgh Festival, the biggest arts festival of its kind in Europe, and there are all sorts of extraordinary people here. Tomorrow we're going to be talking to Alex Salmond, who was, of course, the leader of the SNP, now leads a breakaway party because independence in Scotland is way back now on the political agenda. But I'm joined now by Kevin Maguire. Kevin Maguire, big supporter of the Labour Party. You've been quiet completely on the right. Are Labour really right to be shouting victory is ours after there were no disturbances last night? It's a Pyrrhic victory.
I'm not sure they are shouting victory are ours. They're saying, look, it's effective policing now, and also community cohesion, people condemning the violence, the far-right thugs. And then we saw last night a lot of people going out on the streets. It would be too early to claim a victory, but often you get these spasms. It takes policing a while to catch up. Labour would be getting the blame if they hadn't ended these riots, but I'm not sure there's anything in truth that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, have done that the Conservatives wouldn't have done. So, but there is a poison in the far right of Britain. The security services have been arguing and warning for years now that you face two threats in the UK from terrorism. One is Islamists, Islamofascists, and the other is the homegrown British far right.
Yeah, but of course the far right were a big factor in those riots and disturbances. But Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper can't just talk about that, Kevin. You know that part of the issue, something that was fanning the flames of unrest in some of our towns and cities, is concern about the impact of rapid and mass immigration in towns and communities which no longer feel the way they used to. That's a problem that Keir Starmer has to address.
But we saw both in Southport, where the brutal, horrific murder of those three young girls at a dance class was hijacked by the far right with misinformation, with lies. You also saw there people turning out to rebuild the wall in front of the mosque. So communities are against the violence. You saw it in Sunderland, people turning out to
accept that, but why aren't you addressing the point I'm making?
No, there is concern, but we must not then jump from that to anywhere excuse or legitimise far-right violent thugs who have a poisonous, toxic ideology and are just looking for any excuse to go out and beat people, burn down Citizens Advice Bureau, loot shops, attack the police and other emergency workers. It's where I think you've got to separate those violent thugs from wider legitimate areas of debate, but do not use that to legitimise the rioting and the marauding mob.
And I wouldn't do that, and I've been on the record from the beginning that the violence by the moronic morons was unacceptable. What of the issue of two-tier policing? This is two-tier Keir is a label that I fear for the Prime Minister may stick. We saw the head of the Metropolitan Police push a microphone out of a TV journalist, and when he asked a legitimate question, is there two-tier policing? We saw it in Birmingham, Kevin, where the police ignored the pub, where the landlady had to barricade people in the pub. It was smashed up by Muslim gangs. They were driving their cars at high speed around the round. No police presence that day or the day after. That fans the flames again of the idea of two-tier policing.
It does, and then again, the mob, the yobs, the thugs, the violent far right use that and claim it as an excuse to justify their own behaviour. There is no two-tier policing. What happens is policing catches up with the people who riot. The police in the West Midlands will go after those people. We saw most of the arrests are not on the night when you have riot in Sunderland or wherever. They follow up, because if you take several police officers
to riot... So you're
expecting
people to arrest... You're expecting the police to arrest people involved in the attack on the pub?
And we saw in Leeds, where there was rioting in I think it was the Hare Hills area, 20-odd arrests. Yeah. And I saw some politicians saying, where are the arrests? Some Reform politicians. Richard Tice was like, well, actually, you saw the arrests. They follow. That's what happens. There is no two-tier policing. This is becoming another myth to divide Britain.
Let's talk very briefly about the polls, very early days, but it's not a very long honeymoon for Keir Starmer. And if you look at the polls, he's way back on where Blair was in his first month in power, way back on where Thatcher was, way back even on Gordon Brown in his first month in power. He lacks charisma, Kevin. He didn't speak with any he didn't unite the nation, did he, when he was talking about the horror we all felt by what happened in Southport?
No, I thought he captured the moment on Southport. It was afterwards. How do you capture the mood against the violence? The fact is, he's a doer, not a seer.
Right.
And he's not going to govern in poetry, but he will act in prose and he will make things work. That's what we're seeing happening. Hopefully, this unrest is being quelled. For now, it'll be back. I don't think Thatcher or Blair could have maintained their popularity at those levels in the polls now, because we have an era of constant scrutiny. It's every second of every minute of every hour.
Just briefly, we're here in this great city, the capital city of Scotland, the Edinburgh Festival. You and I are going to be appearing on that stage in the assembly rooms. I'm appearing on the stage. Is it true you're sweeping the stage?
I'd sweep you under the carpet, or carpet you. No, I'll be there with you. Shameless plug. Noon today, then tomorrow and Saturday too, with special guests.
That's not just a plug, that's a 15-amp plug, actually. That's Kevin Maguire from the Daily Mirror. I'm Andrew Pearce. Stay with GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, almost 70% of 18 to 25-year-olds, we don't know whether that's men or women, but they say that women shouldn't breastfeed in public. 19% would even go as far as labelling it disgusting.
Well, only a quarter of Brits say that women shouldn't have to cover up when they're breastfeeding. So clearly there is a big debate here and one to get to the bottom of. And to do so, we're joined by parenting journalist Annette Kellu. Really good to see you this morning, Annette.
Really good to see you.
Why is this stigma still existing in our society?
I think we've got a case here going on of double standards. I don't know about you, but I live near a park, OK? One little hint of sun, the men get completely naked. Honestly, you've never seen anything like it. The bodies are out, all different shapes and sizes. So why is it not OK for a woman to feed her baby? You know, we've got this whole thing. They're OK to be naked doing what they want. Why can't a woman just feed her baby? Why is it shameful in 2024? And it's interesting what you say about the 18 to 25-year-olds, because I really want to know, are they men or women? Because I feel like they'd be men.
I was going to say, have you got a hunch? Have you got a suspicion?
Yes, I have. And I think as well, they're thinking of them as sexy time, you know? And I feel like they're not... Well, maybe that's because they're bombarded with images and they see things like that they're seeing it in that context. But it's really not. It's feeding the baby. It's simple. Shouldn't be shameful.
But do you think for men it's like they can't see the difference? There's so much porn in society, isn't there, that breasts are sexualised and seen as this sexual object and not actually for their main primary purpose, which is actually feeding a child.
Immediate association.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they can't.
And you can't see that they could have two functions.
Absolutely. And to them as well, I feel like they see it, and on the other side of it, they think like, ooh, mummy, and that brings up weird feelings for them, maybe.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom 10:21. It's Bev and Ben this morning with Andrew up in Scotland at the Edinburgh Festival. We are joined in the studio by Carol Malone and former Labour candidate Susie Stride in the studio. Right, ladies, tons to talk about. We're just saying, Carol, these headlines across the paper, all unanimous that all unanimous. These were riots by far-right thugs, and it proves that everybody in this country is united against thugs and also very pro-immigration. What's going on when all the newspapers agree like this?
Well, you know, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it was good to see. I mean, I got very worried yesterday because I was watching people gathering outside London, lots of people on bikes and in masks gathering outside the city, and I thought, oh, my God, it's going to be a night of hell. But no, this is good. It looks like, you know, we're finally coming together as a country. We're finally saying enough is enough.
Agreed.
But that doesn't mean it's all down to the far right. It really doesn't. You know, the violence we've seen on all sides over the past few days has been inexcusable. It's been terrifying, in fact, when you realise how fragile peace is in all of our cities. But, you know, I don't like the idea it's just the far right that are being blamed for it. They should be blamed, and the ones that are being put in jail today, absolutely right. But there's other people who should also be on there who I haven't seen that. But this is good. I mean, this is good because the demonstrations are massed in areas where there had been rumours that there might be a lot of trouble. So they went there to try and counteract that. And it turned out that those people the thugs weren't going to go to those areas. But it's a show of unity, which is what we've needed over the past 4 days, because it felt like our country was being defined by violence.
But when you say it's a show of unity, it basically gives the message now, I think, anybody that complains about too much immigration too quickly and those have legitimate grievances about their life, all that will happen is Keir Starmer will say, well, I refer you to the front page of the Daily Mail from today, and you can quite clearly see that the whole of Britain is on board with multiculturalism, and we're just one big, lovely, happy melting pot. I know you can't afford your coffee, but tough.
That does frighten me, and that's why I said today that a lot of the thugs on the front of the papers today, there were all white faces on there, and we have seen the films on here that was not the case. The violence on Monday night in Birmingham was shocking. We saw what happened there, but we're not talking about that. And that's the problem in this country. That's why we can't address the real problems of what's caused these riots, because people won't acknowledge it. And you're right. It did occur to me that Starmer would actually say, oh, well, the people are OK about immigration, so I don't have a plan to stop the boats, but anyway, you're all happy about it, and we're not.
Susie, is that the assessment of this situation here? Is that this is the left all coming together? Because even though these pictures look like there's lots of people, it's still only a few thousand people out of a country of, what, 70 million or so now. So is this a victory for Labour? Can they claim this is all their success?
I think there's two different things going on here. I think ultimately everyone is united that we didn't want violence on the street. I think it's absolutely right to say that it wasn't just one homogenous group going out, you know. And I think, look, we all feel relieved. I was in Peterborough yesterday getting my nails done, and the police were coming in saying the shops have all got to close. And I was like, no, let me get my nails done. But, you know, and I was thinking there was this horrible, eerie atmosphere. And I thought, this isn't good. We don't want this in our country. I don't want people in other countries reading about us like this. So in some ways, I think, you know, look, this is really positive. I think this is, you know, well done to the police. I would say well done to Keir Starmer. I think it's absolutely...
Well done to Keir Starmer.
I think it was very important how strong he came out of this.
No, I'm sorry, it took him 6 days to come out.
But there were two sides to this story. Just because unity, and there's been unity in the streets, does not mean that we ignore... A month ago, there was an election in this country, and a number of people voted a certain way. There are whole sections of this country that are not happy about immigration, controlled immigration. And I think, I've said this time and time again, all of the parties need to humble themselves and listen. The Conservative Party need to humble themselves and listen because obviously they lost. The Labour Party need to humble themselves and listen because we didn't win-win, did we?
You just didn't lose,
so don't worry. It's very, very important. I want to assure you that I think there are good people in high up parts of the Labour Party that are not going to be stupid on this.
So, Susie, during the election, part of the manifesto was that Starmer said, as did Yvette Cooper, that they had a ready-made plan ready to go to control immigration. Where is it? Why haven't we seen it? 4,000 people have come on boats, just on boats alone, to this country since Labour were elected. They don't have a policy. They're dismantling almost... I mean, the Tories didn't put much in place to control immigration. They did try. But the things that they did put in place, the Illegal Immigration Act, Rwanda, the visa limitation for only being to have to earn so much before you come here, Labour is dismantling all of that, and they've got nothing to put in.
They don't need it.
Carol, it doesn't matter now, because they've won power, they've got their landslide, and if you oppose small boats coming, or you oppose towns being flooded with legal migrants and the infrastructure's not there to back it up, you're a far-right thug.
Yes,
that's the narrative now.
True. And
it doesn't matter.
Anyone
so they don't care.
On social media, over the last 3 or 4 days, you have a load of very ordinary, very decent working people who grannies and granddads and mums and dads who are putting pictures of themselves up saying, I'm a far-right thug because I disagree with 20 years of uncontrolled immigration.
Yeah, and all I want to say is this is very important, and I agree with what you're saying. There are people that, have really poor views on race, and they are in a certain category. I mean, I was brought up on the Isle of Dogs where we had the BNP. There's a 12-year-old kid who had skinheads. There are certain people in this country, and we don't want that. However, there are just normal people. I've just been in the Lake District with a family that I've known for years, and, all of them at the table, half of them were like, we voted reform. But, you've got to listen to people. We've got to listen. Whether I agree with them or not.
Susie, do you think your leader is going to listen to people? Because it seems to me that he's just going la, 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 because the elites in the Labour Party don't care about immigration. It's not a problem for them. They don't see why we shouldn't have open borders. Starmer's just agreed to take another however many tens of thousands of people from Spain because he thinks we're not taking enough migrants in. So he's not listening. He's just, he's...
No, I think we've made it very, very clear, that this is going to be a priority. And I do think, you'd have to be extremely unintelligent to not realise that this is a top issue in this country. This is something that people concerned about. But I don't think that the answer is, it's not going to just be a blunt tool on this. There's different things, isn't there? Number one,
there's nothing.
Even the fact that they're going to make sure that we begin to actually process people's applications, so people that shouldn't be here.
You're just giving amnesty and letting everyone in who comes, and that's not processing. That's just letting them in.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. It's like yesterday.
It is happening.
I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think over the last 10 years, I don't think the Conservatives, unfortunately, have a very good record on this. We haven't seen a good record on this, and actually what they were trying to do wasn't working. I think
Rwanda didn't work because Labour consistently voted against it. That's why Rwanda was never allowed.
I think we're 4 weeks in. I think, let's come back in a few months and let's see. Yvette Cooper is a force to be reckoned with.
No, she's not.
She is.
She's been appalling.
I actually do think let's see where we are in a couple of months' time. I think let's see where we are. But it's really interesting because I was on yesterday and someone was saying to me, we're allowing people that that are going to land in this country and they're going to get council homes and people that've got to. And then I called my friend who's very high up in a housing landlord and big registered social landlord, and she said, Susie, we already have these powers. We've had these powers for years. This headline is completely dated and irrelevant. And my concern is we have to be very careful.
No, Susie, answer the question, and this is what politicians do evolve. Where are we going to put the 4,000, for instance, who came just this month alone? Where are they going to go if they're not going to go in housing that we already have?
They've already said they're going to disperse them across the country.
Yeah, but where is
private homes.
Exactly.
Yeah, private homes, private landlords who are renting out to Serco on 10-year contracts, inflated rents. Landlords, they're saying, thank you very much, mate, 10 years rent and inflated costs.
What I would say is the Conservatives... I've actually worked with refugees, but I think we're talking refugees that have come here because they're persecuted for their faith. If they go back to Iran, they're going to, they'll be tortured and killed. So, different types of people coming over to the country. However, what I want to say is this. The Conservatives, the bill that they raked up, because those people were in hotels, and not being processed.
You guys are going to rake
but let's be honest,
it's going to cost the same.
Funny thing is, look, 14 years, whatever we're talking about here is a Tory...
Susie, it's going to cost
But my question to you would be, do you think the Tories did a good job?
No,
did they do a good job?
You know what I think? No. What I really think...
Because anything we're commenting on now is the Tories. Because they had 14 years.
You asked me a question, let me answer it. So I think if the Labour had backed off and let the Rwanda plan work for 3 months even, it would have deterred lots of people coming, but they never gave it a chance. You can't say a plan doesn't work if you keep keep blocking it.
I mean, I think ultimately the Conservative record on this was poor,
and we
that's
still
why
don't.
people voted them out.
And we still don't really know what Labour are going to do. I mean, you say Yvette Cooper's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, she will only be interviewed mainly by her husband on Good Morning Britain. She's very welcome on here any time, Yvette Cooper. But how is she a force to be reckoned with?
I mean, I was going to say, is it a big deal? We've had boys interviews. I mean,
yes. Is it a big deal? How can you ask that question?
100%.
Not unless you're a raging communist. No, I guess it's not.
Where's the
I'm definitely not a raging communist, but, you know. But anyway.
North Korea, it happens all the time. It's just here we quite like to hold our politicians to account.
By the Corbyn lot.
Border security force that she's been rambling about for months. You know, she can't get anyone to head it because no one wants to take the job because it's a poison challenge.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, like, literally, we're 3-4 weeks in. 3-4 weeks in.
Yes, but where's your plans?
I think we've got a very clear plan. I think give it a few months.
Well, I hope you're right.
I mean, at the moment, they've been in for 3-4 weeks.
What's the plan?
They've had the King's speech, and then now they're on recess.
Our plan right now is to go to the news with Tatiana Sanchez. Ladies, you'll be back in the next hour. Here's Tatiana.
Bev, thank you. The top stories this hour. The Metropolitan Police says officers have made 10 more arrests over the violent disorder outside Downing Street yesterday evening. It comes as police launched dawn raids in London this morning to round up suspected rioters. Thousands of counter-protesters rallied in cities and towns across England after a week of disorder. In Croydon, 10 were arrested for offences including assault on an emergency worker. However, gatherings that took place in North London, Bristol and Newcastle were largely peaceful last night, with counter-protesters chanting "Refugees are welcome here." Police had been braced for further violence, with thousands of officers deployed and more than 100 events anticipated. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has praised police forces across the country for how they dealt with the unrest last night.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police.
Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill says it's important for political leaders to speak with one voice following scenes of violent disorder on the streets of Belfast. Stormont's been recalled following the rioting, which police say involves a parliamentary element. Members of the Legislative Assembly meet today to discuss a motion condemning criminal damage and targeting of businesses in recent days. 6 people have been arrested for race-related hate crimes and disorder across Belfast. The police service of Northern Ireland came under a sustained attack from petrol bombs and bricks in the city on Monday night. There have been several arrests in recent days, including a boy as young as 14 linked to allegations of race-related hate crimes, disorder and rioting. And patients in England with an inherited blood disorder are to become the first in Europe to benefit from a gene therapy costing well over £1 million a shot. The treatment, called Casgevy, uses molecular scissors to disable a faulty gene that causes the debilitating condition beta thalassemia. Currently, people severely affected by the disease need blood transfusions every few weeks because their own red blood cells are unable to carry enough oxygen around the body. But in trials, 90% of people were effectively cured by a single treatment. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, the Labour MP Jess Phillips, she's of course the MP for Birmingham Yardley, has published her 4th book. It's called Let's Be Honest. Interesting. It was more honesty, if there was more honesty from our politicians in the UK. Would it rebuild your trust in them? Jess Phillips, of course, has some of her own questions to ask, which we will probe in the next couple of minutes. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We'll be back in just a tick.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather forecast for this morning, and it's a damp and humid start to your Thursday. We've got some heavy rain on the cards through the day today, but brighter signs as we go into Friday. Taking a look at the picture out there this morning, quite a grey, damp start across Wales, southwest England, and that rain spreads its way in across Northern Ireland and northern counties of England as well. As we go into the afternoon, some of that rain will turn quite heavy across these northern counties of England, Northern Ireland, southern Scotland. We could get the odd rumble of thunder. Largely dry towards the southeast though, some sunny breaks, but you can see how humid it is across the map. Temperatures of 21 to 24 degrees, feeling really quite uncomfortable out there with all that going on. Let's take a closer look then as we zoom across into Scotland. Through Thursday evening, still staying dry across the Northern Isles. As we come down into mainland Scotland, quite a lot of rain for the evening rush hour, so do take care if you're heading out and about. Moving southwards into northern England, some heavy pulses here denoted by the yellows and reds on the chart there. A lot of low cloud for Wales, outbreaks of rain and drizzle, similarly for the southwest of England as well. Somewhat drier further south and east though. Those temperatures staying on the warm side, and it stays warm and humid as we go through Thursday night. Further bits and pieces of rain to come, mainly out towards our western hills and coasts, but still some showers working their way eastwards. A lot of low cloud out there as well. Some clear skies towards the end of the night further north. Temperatures somewhat fresher here, but an uncomfortable night further south. 18 or 19 degrees really will feel uncomfortable first thing on Friday. Now we get rid of that rain fairly early on across the southeast, some cloud to follow on behind, but actually for England and Wales a much brighter day to come on Friday, much less humid, much more in the way of sunshine, feeling quite pleasant, and some sunny spells too further north, but a scattering of showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England. Top temperature 25 degrees for the southeast, warmer still as we head towards the weekend. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M62 in West Yorkshire is blocked westbound between junctions 23 and 22 near Huddersfield, causing queues. The A1M in South Yorkshire is blocked northbound between junctions 36 and 37 near Doncaster, with queues towards there. Train services are suspended between Manchester Airport and Manchester Piccadilly because of a points failure. The A1 in Cambridge is closed northbound from the A47 at Wansford to the A43 south of Stamford after an accident overnight, with long delays towards there. And as you divert, on the M5 in Worcestershire, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed northbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 4A from Droitwich to the M42. It's taking nearly half an hour in the queues. The M25 in Kent is blocked by an accident clockwise just before the Clackett Lane services where a car's overturned. There are queues back onto the M26. And in Devon, the A38 is closed eastbound from Ashburton to Drum Bridges after an accident causing queues heading away from Plymouth towards Exeter.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Bev and Ben this morning with you. It's 10:38. You've been getting in touch at home. gbnews.com/your say.
Paul, good morning. You say, I disagree with the presenters. More CCTV is needed. Facial recognition is needed. Unless Ben and Bev have something to hide, wouldn't you like to know? I don't see what's wrong with it. I've got nothing to hide, so I don't care if I'm recorded. Well, look, that's like saying, as Edward Snowden famously said, saying you don't care about privacy because you've got nothing to hide is the same as saying you don't care about free speech because you've got nothing to say. It's your human right, and quite frankly, whether I've got anything to hide or not, I don't want the government and the authorities snooping around my business.
Privacy is important. The concept of privacy is something that we're losing every single day. I don't think my children's generation, your children's generation, will know what it is to be private, to know what it is to walk down the street and not be part of your brain thinking about the fact that you're being monitored, your face is being assessed. We see it now every till, don't we, going to the supermarket. And don't think that this won't have an effect on how we feel as human beings. We're not meant to be observed all the time. And Silky Carlup from Big Brother Watch, as you know, I'm a huge, if you watch regularly, I'm a huge fan of the work of Big Brother Watch. They are breathing down the neck of the government at all the moments that they have to be. And Silky's written a brilliant piece in the Telegraph today where she said, don't give Whitehall's censors a blank cheque. Because whilst everyone's been talking about two-tier policing and right versus the far right versus the Islamic community, what's happening behind the scenes is about control of the population, and just be really careful what you wish for under the auspices of being safe.
And Silky was responding to a story in the Daily Telegraph today saying that secretive COVID-era spy agency brought in to monitor social media during riots. So that the government have basically revamped this COVID-era spy unit, which used to spy on COVID centres, those that spoke out against lockdowns and everything else, and they've now turned it into an online monitoring tool, a spy tool, or spy unit, in relation to the riots.
To spy on you. To spy on you. And if you don't agree with what the government say, then you could absolutely get a knock on the door, because this idea of misinformation, disinformation is so nebulous, because we've seen it so much in the last 4 years. What the government will tell you is fact is not always fact. In fact, more often than not, I'd say it's not. I'm much more frightened of the government right now than I am far-right protesters or any sort of Islamic thugs who take to the street.
And people have had knocks on the door for things they've said online over this past couple of weeks. But do you know one person who hasn't? Nick Lowles, the chief exec of far-left campaign group Hope Not Hate, who said about a week ago that there was an incident where Muslims had acid thrown over them, inciting violence, it's been argued, inciting more tensions across Britain. He apologised for reporting fake news. He's not had a knock at the door. Nobody's asked him why he tweeted what he did. He said it was a mistake, but we've had people on the other side of the argument saying that they made mistakes by tweeting the false name of the person involved in the Southport incident, and they've had knocks on the door. Some are being jailed for it. Why hasn't Nick Lowles of Hope Not Hate, who gets government funding, or has at least in previous years from the Home Office, to carry out their far-left activities, why hasn't he had a knock on the door?
Complicated issues, aren't there? Right. And it's all about trust, as is this story. Let's be honest. That's the title of the new book by Labour MP Jess Phillips, who's calling for democracy to be safeguarded. Interesting. I think we'd all welcome a little honesty from politicians. Well, former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards, friend of the show, joins us now. Morning, Peter. Always good to see you. So let's be honest, says Labour MP Jess Phillips. What does she mean when she says that our democracy has to be safeguarded? What does that look like in the world of Jess Phillips?
Well, Jess Phillips is quite a long-standing MP now, elected in 2015. She's primarily known for campaigning against domestic violence, and she used to manage refugees, women's refugees in the Birmingham, West Midlands area. But she's also known for being incredibly blunt speaking and encouraging politicians just to tell the truth to their constituents in the media and not use some of the contortions or what's called triangulating, where you have 2 points, A and Z, and you try and say something in the middle that doesn't offend anyone. So I've not read her book. It's only just been published. But she generally, is a tribune for free speech and candour and realism.
So, Peter, may I ask, the title of the book about honesty is, for me, rather ironic, because when Jess was getting heckled during her election campaign 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, whenever it was, by those of the Muslim contingent in her community, which she narrowly lost her seat to them, by the way, the independent pro-Gaza candidate, she didn't even have the...
Phillips won her seat.
She almost narrowly lost her seat.
Almost lost the seat, yeah. She didn't have, I'd argue, the courage to call out by name who those people were. And again, in the last couple of days during these riots, she's been defending those people who were turning up to protest armed with weapons, saying that they were just readying themselves for the far right. So doesn't she lack a bit of honesty when it comes to those two issues?
I've not seen or read anything where Jess Phillips is defending violence or people being equipped for violence, and I don't think she would do so. And I'd make a broader point.
Well, she did. She tweeted it.
And I say this having lived in East London and in Tower Hamlets for many years. I'm not imputing any motives, but let's not talk about Muslims as one block. Just like Christians or Jews are people of no faith, there are people of a range of ages and a range of faiths, and they're not one monolithic block who all think the same view about everything. Some are ultra-conservative and some are ultra-liberal. So I discourage you from talking about Muslims in Birmingham as if they perhaps were all of the same view.
Peter, let me just read that tweet to you. She said, she's retweeting a Sky News clip where armed Muslim men go to the camera with weapons and pretending to fire a gun. She retweeted it and said, these people came to this location because it's been spread that racists were coming to attack them. She's defending armed gangs on the streets, making gestures that indicate violence, pulling a trigger by saying they were just readying themselves for far-right thuggery. That's not being honest.
Well, no one should be pretending to shoot a gun. You know, if you're an adult, that's intimidatory. But you'll note that the last sentence of Jess Phillips's tweet said violence will not be tolerated. So I think she's been pretty clear that she's anti-violence.
I'm not saying she's pro-violence. I'm saying that she hasn't been honest and spoken with integrity, commenting on these riots. She's saying that these armed Muslim groups are there because they're readying themselves for the threat of the far right. And also during the campaign where she narrowly lost her seat, she didn't call them out, these people out by name. She didn't call these people out by name and call them, you know, radical.
I'm sorry, you're so confused. You said it again. She didn't lose her seat.
I never said she lost her seat. I know she won her seat. I said she narrowly avoided losing her seat by a couple of about 1,000 or 2,000 votes.
Okay.
She's a Home Office minister. How could she have lost her seat?
Exactly. That was the point I'm making. But I also think you're offering no context to that tweet, and it's not really balanced either. I wasn't in Birmingham, so I don't have all the details going on, but there's no suggestion at all that she was defending violence. No suggestion at all.
Understood. And I think, and she wasn't defending the violence, but I think the tweet that we're talking about, I think it was on the screen, I'm not sure, is where she basically says that the people who came out, the Muslim boys who came out with weapons and drove around the roundabout in their cars very quickly outside the Clumsy Swan pub were provoked to come out. It was almost as though they had no choice but to come out. But in terms of trust, Peter, I think there's never been a time almost where trust in the elites who run our country is at an all-time low. And I think that looking at the way these altercations have been handled in the last few days by Keir Starmer, narrowly describing all those people who came out with, some of them with legitimate grievances, as far right, doesn't do a lot to engender trust in the electorate, does it? Because it's just not correct.
Well, first of all, thank you for providing some of the detail of what's gone on in Birmingham. I take the broader point that anyone who waves a weapon out of a car window is behaving in a threatening and intimidating criminal way. And even being a victim of prejudice, and many of us have faced abuse in our lives, doesn't justify waving a weapon, full stop.
Yeah.
But I do think Keir Starmer's being honest because, you know, politicians have to address en masse what's going on in the country. And it's clear that the protests, or I should say riots this week, were led by people on the far right. And again, I've not met anyone, you know, left, right or centre that believes that it was angry Remainers or Liberal Democrats leading riots. It was the far right leading riots, and they were doing so to cause distress, often motivated by racism.
OK, all right, we've run out of time, Peter, but thank you so much for joining us on that. I still object to this idea that everyone there was far right. Some of them were just bored, idiot scallies who wouldn't know the definition of far right if it came up and smacked them in the chops. Right, up next, transgender ex-boxing promoter Kelly Maloney is going to give us her verdict on the Olympics gender boxing row. You don't want to miss that. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Tom, dying to talk to you about this. Transport for London, right? They run the buses and tubes and things in London, and they've got £2.5 million. £2.5 million, which they're going to spend on what?
Diversity training. I dare say they've probably got plenty of it already.
But let me tell you something. I sit on a board of a company, and I was diversity trained recently.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
And I must admit,
What was that like?
Well, I tell you, it was like stating the bleeding obvious, right? So you sit there and you say, well, why would I do that? Or why would I treat someone like that? I wouldn't do that in the first place. I don't need to be trained in this. And you just sat there for 6 hours while people told you the obvious. But what do you think of spending that amount of money for Transport for London?
It's crazy, because on the one hand, do we need this diversity training? The TfL is an incredibly diverse workforce already. The idea that there are barriers to entry there doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Also, as you say, these things are commonsensical, really. And to the point, sometimes they can become problematic because they're not just saying, you know, be open and tolerant of people and so on. It's actually preaching a more kind of divisive sort of rhetoric to people, which can be a big problem in the
you get your
workplace.
diversity training from your boss or somebody, don't you? Somebody pulls you up and says, you don't talk to people like that. This is how you talk to them. That's it. Done.
It should be that
Spend
simple.
6 hours in front of...
And I know that in the grand scheme of things, £2.5 million is kind of money down the back of the sofa. But at the same time, my local tube station just closes early on random nights of the week because of the fact that they haven't got enough staff.
4 years ago, there were 655 people at City Hall earning over £100,000 a year. People might argue that's 655 too many. There are 1,100 now. 4 years later.
1,100.
Actually, 1,142 to be precise.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Very good morning, it's 10:51. This is Britain's Newsroom with Bev and Ben on GB News.
Now, Taiwanese boxer Lin Yu-ting has successfully gone through to the women's featherweight boxing final at the Olympic Games in Paris. That's just a day after Algerian boxer Imaine Khalif passed through to the finals in the welterweight.
Obviously, it's an incredibly controversial issue. So to discuss why, we're joined by boxing promoter, delighted to see you this morning, Kelly Maloney. Morning, Kelly. Morning. Morning. Right, tell us your position on this. Should these individuals who have been raised female be able to fight in these Olympic Games because they have XY chromosomes, so biologically they are male?
Well, we're being told that by the Russian Federation, that have been banned by the Olympic Committee. We've not seen proof of that. And these two girls who are maybe intersex, I don't know, because I'm not a medical profession, so I can't comment on the medical side of it, but they've broke no rules. They're following the rules of the Olympic. The argument should be with the Olympic Committee, not with the two fighters.
Because the IBA, so the International Boxing Association, banned them from competing in their competitions because they failed this gender test. But as you say, Kelly, we don't really know the details because this is private medical information. Now, if the girls themselves, and I'm going to call them girls, I know a lot of our viewers don't like that, but that is how they've been raised. If they thought they had a case, they would have surely appealed that decision, and they didn't. So they know that they are XY chromosomes.
So I don't know what they are, and nor do you, and nor does anyone. All we know is what the Olympic Committee have said, that they are females and they've allowed them to box. And if you look at it, they've boxed all their lives as females. It's not as if they're knocking everyone out. I mean, the Algerian girl, she's lost 9 times to other women. Why was there not a fuss kicked up when they were in the last Olympics? It's only since the Russians have been banned from the Olympics have we seen this surface, and so they're being used as political footballs between two federations. And I say both federations. Both federations are wrong. If the Russians have got proof, they should show it, and the Olympics should do maybe different testing, and then we could get this dead right. And if they do prove to have extra male chromosomes or bigger testosterone than they should have, then they should not be allowed to box.
Well, shouldn't we find that out first before they go around smashing women in the face?
I don't think they're smashing women in the face.
Well, they are. The Italian resigned because she'd never been hit so hard in her life. Don't you think we should find out for sure first before we put them in the ring with ladies?
Excuse me. How comes the other 40 girls that she boxed have not said the same thing? I think the Italian was used as...
Kelly, sorry to cut you short. Big apologies. We're pushed for time. We're going to have to go to the weather, unfortunately. Thank you, though, for joining us. Very much appreciate you being with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Here is Annie with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A pretty overcast and muggy day today. Rain's going to spread in from the south and west, though tomorrow is looking that much brighter wherever you are. So this weather front, a warm front at first, bringing in that muggy air, will spread in from the southwest, bringing with it outbreaks of quite heavy rain at times, particularly across northwestern areas. But across western coast, the hills of Wales, the southwest, there's going to be a lot of cloud around through this afternoon, and that thicker cloud will spread up into northern areas of England, much of Scotland as well. The far northeast of Scotland staying clear of the rain through much of the day, but elsewhere risk of drizzly outbreaks of rain. And temperatures not doing too badly, but I think you'll really notice that muggier feel. Through this evening, the rain will spread up further north and east, moving into parts of northern Scotland, into the Northern Isles and the far northeast. Some heavy bursts across parts of Aberdeenshire are possible. Temperatures in the mid-teens for many of us. It's going to be a rather muggy night tonight. Lots of cloud around across Northern Ireland, across much of northern England as well. The coasts here still feeling pretty drizzly and overcast. A little bit drier across southeastern areas, but I think still there's the risk of some drizzly rain through this evening, and it's definitely going to remain quite grey. Lots of cloud overnight as well. As I said, it's going to be a very mild night, quite a close night as well. It will turn a bit fresher from the north and west as the night progresses. That's as the main weather front clears away to the south. So turning a bit fresher across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, the far north of Wales, but still that muggy feel by tomorrow morning across southern areas of England. And that will likely linger through the first few hours of Friday. Some drizzly rain possible here. But then once it does clear, it is going to be a brighter day on Friday, more in the way of sunshine, particularly as we head into the afternoon. Still, though, across many northern areas of Scotland, a bit of a breeze and a risk of some showers, but temperatures around average for the time of year. That's all for now, and I'll see you again later. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK. From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday, we are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. Hope you're well. It's 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 8th of August. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Ben Leo, and Bev Turner.
So has order been restored? Well, overnight, thousands of anti-racism, you might say pro-immigration protesters united. Police were, of course, braced for 100 anti-immigration protests. Funny enough, they didn't happen. Is this a win for Sir Keir Starmer? He's certainly claiming it is.
And concern in the palace as well from the King. King Charles asks the government for daily updates on the protests as tensions remain high across the country.
An airline, EasyJet, wants to recruit over 50s to their cabin crew as apparently middle-aged people crave a new challenge. Have you changed career later on in your life? Stop looking at me, Ben Leo.
And Andrew Pearce with you here. I'm in Edinburgh for the greatest, the biggest, the largest arts festival in the whole of Europe. I'm in George Street in the new town. I'm going to be talking to politicians, and I'm also going to be talking to that man, Kevin Maguire, about whether Keir Starmer is really right to be claiming victory at the fact there were no riots after all yesterday. Bev and I predicted, I think, yesterday on Britain's Newsroom, there wouldn't be any at all. All that coming up, though, after the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you and good morning. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Metropolitan Police has made 10 more arrests over the violent disorder outside Downing Street last week as officers launched raids in London this morning. They say it's related to the disorder in Whitehall on Wednesday night. Police scoured thousands of hours of footage from body-worn video, CCTV footage and social media to identify those responsible for fueling and committing violent behaviour. Well, that is thousands of counter-protesters rallied in cities and towns across England after a week of disorder. Several arrests were made for offences including assault on an emergency worker in Croydon. However, gatherings that took place in North London, Bristol and Newcastle were largely peaceful, with counter-protesters chanting, "Refugees are welcome here." Police had been braced for further violence, with thousands of officers deployed and more than 100 events anticipated. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has praised police forces across the country for how they dealt with the unrest last night.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police.
Policing Minister Dame Diana Johnson told GB News this morning she's optimistic following police responses yesterday.
What we saw last night were the vast majority, the law-abiding people of this country, expressing a view that we live in a tolerant Britain. We are law-abiding people. We do not like to see this disorder, this violence, this criminality on our streets. So I think it's that. I think the public revulsion at what happened, the police being on our streets, providing that security and safety, and then there's swift justice. So I think it's a combination of things that makes me cautiously optimistic about how this is now being dealt with.
Meanwhile, it's understood the King has asked for daily updates on protests around the UK following the Southport stabbings. His Majesty King Charles is said to be engaging privately in the issues the unrest has generated. The King has a record of involvement in issues around community cohesion and interfaith dialogue.
Meanwhile, reports of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK in the first half of this year have reached another record high, according to figures from a Jewish security charity. The Community Security Trust says it registered almost 2,000 cases in the first half of this year, compared to 964 over the same period last year. The charity, which provides protection for British Jews against anti-Semitic attacks, says it's the highest total ever reported to CST in the first 6 months of any year. Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill says it's important for political leaders to speak with one voice following scenes of violent disorder on the streets of Belfast. Stormont's been recalled following rioting in Belfast, which police say involves a parliamentary element. Members of the Legislative Assembly meet today to discuss a motion condemning criminal damage and targeting of businesses in recent days. 6 people have been arrested for race-related hate crimes and disorder across Belfast. The Police Service of Northern Ireland came under sustained attack from petrol bombs and bricks in the city on Monday night. There have been several arrests in recent days, including a boy as young as 14, linked to allegations of race-related hate crimes, disorder and rioting. In other news, patients in England with an inherited blood disorder are to become the first in Europe to benefit from a gene therapy costing well over £1 million a shot. The treatment, called Casgevy, uses molecular scissors to disable a faulty gene that causes the debilitating condition beta thalassemia. It can cause delayed growth, bone and hormonal problems, and affect quality and length of life. But in trials of Casgevy, 90% of people were effectively cured by a single treatment. And a special set of stamps is being issued marking the history of the Tower of London. Royal Mail has partnered with historic royal palaces on the images of the 10 stamps. The main set of 6 stamps include the White Tower, Tower Green and the King's House. Royal Mail says the stamps celebrate the myth and legend, ceremony and tradition of one of the most famous buildings in the world. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Bevan Ben today. Andrew is at the Edinburgh Festival. We'll be going to him in just a moment, but we're kind of reflecting on events this week as we get to Thursday. Of course, last night the police were apparently braced for more than 100 demonstrations. Businesses were panicking and putting MDF in their windows, and of course, it didn't happen. Some people didn't think it was going to happen anyway. There aren't that many crazy far-right people in this country that want to go out setting migrant hotels alight, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, Nick Knowles from Hope Not... Nick Lowles, Hope Not Hate, not of DIY.
Nick Knowles, he doesn't do DIY anymore. Now he just spreads misinformation about riots. He's had one of those career changes after 50.
Hope Not Hate admitting that the riots last night, the perceived riots that were planned, were a hoax. So tens of millions of pounds, I suggest, on extra policing, choppers in the air, all from a hoax. I don't understand why this hoax wasn't investigated. They organised the police action based off a Telegram message, which was clearly a troll message. But who wrote that message? Why did the authorities not investigate it? And all that's happened now is you've woken up this morning across all the newspapers, The Guardian, The Daily Mail, even The Sun, all with the same line of Britain uniting against racism, against thuggery, and the key point here, that we're all pro-migration.
Britain United is a good thing. Let's be honest, we like that. But this,
not all pro-migration, though.
This weird utopian image of this country, which all the newspapers, regardless of their normal political allegiance, have agreed on this morning, that everything is fine, everything is marvellous. Where's it leaving you? Is your head spinning like ours is? Because there are genuine, legitimate grievances that people can hold in this country at the moment that might make them feel sufficiently angry to go out and push over a wheelie bin. I don't think you should be going out and punching police officers in the face. That is always wrong. And massive shout out to some of the police who've been amazing this week. But we've got 7,000 businesses insolvent in the first quarter of this country at the moment. We've got 7 million people on the NHS waiting list. We've got a government in power who effectively have got 2/3 of the seats with only 1/3 of the votes. So it isn't all as settled and as marvellous as the papers are making out. And what's coming out of the back of this really strange set of events this week? Censorship, clamping down on what you can and can't say freely in your own house or on your own mobile devices.
This Telegraph story this morning saying that the government has reinvigorated a COVID-era spy unit. So this disinformation unit that the government, the Tory government at the time, used to combat, I think you were probably on the list, weren't you?
I was on that list, I am on that list.
To combat COVID dissenters, has now been revamped to spy on Brits online during these riots.
Because you know what, it turned out that during that time I was right with the things that I said, and I was on that list. And if we fast forward to a time with a more authoritarian government, which it very much looks like this lot are going, I could have a knock on the door and I could end up in prison for something that's deemed misinformation, but turns out, with the passage of time, to have been right. Ofcom wrote a letter yesterday. Now, bear in mind, we've got this online safety bill in the offing at the moment. I mean, it makes the hairs on the back on my arms stand up on end when I think about where this is going. But they said in this letter yesterday, an open letter to online service providers, and they said, you will be aware the Online Safety Act sets out new responsibilities for online services around how they assess and mitigate the risks of illegal activity. But they say you don't need to wait until this comes in. Do something now. Some of the most widely used online sites and apps will, in due course, need to go even further by consistently applying their terms of service, which will include banning things like hate speech. Fine. We have that already. Inciting violence. Fine. But what's your definition of that? And harmful disinformation. That phrase is absolutely open to interpretation, and that's where this ends.
How many civil liberties are we going to give up to combat far-right thuggery? That's the big question. What's coming off the back of this? What's coming down the road? Do we have the foresight to see, or the insight, rather, to see what's coming as a result of this?
Because this lot here, like I said, the pink-haired people who make their own muesli, this lot with their yellow placards, they would love to be surveilled every second they walk down the streets to keep them safe. Won't be that. Right, GBNews reporter Adam Cherry is with us from Westminster. Good morning. Adam, bring us the latest from this, from a political point of view. What's going on?
Well, so the government's cautiously optimistic that the worst is behind us. So we heard from Dame Diane Johnson, who is the policing minister, on GBNews this morning, saying that just that the worst has now passed, and perhaps we're through this, or at least the immediate rioting. Whether we address the underlying problems that you guys have been talking about in the last few minutes is another question. I think this means immediately the calls to return, or rather to recall Parliament, which is currently in recess, will dial back slightly. The likes of Puberty Patel, Nigel Farage calling for that, but given there's no escalation, it seems, of these riots and protests that pose an immediate danger, the political reasons to do that for the government are much weaker. They didn't want to do it in the first place anyway. They argued that actually the executive had all the powers it needed already. It's interesting you bring up the social media powers or policing that was encouraged immediately in response to this unrest, and there will be questions over whether that was appropriate and who decides what is incitement and who has that authority, and are there consequences to that. We are expecting to hear from the Prime Minister as soon as this morning, perhaps early afternoon, so we'll have more then, and perhaps we'll have something to say on those questions.
OK, thank you, Adam, there in Westminster. Right, of course, Andrew Pearce is still part of the show today, even though Ben is here in the studio, because Andrew is in Edinburgh, and we're going to go over live to him now. What are you doing there, Andrew? Why aren't you here?
Well, Bev, morning to you again, and morning, Ben. Well, it's the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the biggest festival of its kind in Europe. Actually, I've got a confession that I am appearing in it, promoting that book of mine again with Kevin Maguire. But I just want to say one thing, Bev, about your response about the newspapers. I can tell you this, my newspaper is not taking a utopian view of the world. We know there are underlying issues which were a factor in why there was so much unrest across the streets. But like everybody else, there was a sense of relief last night that there wasn't disturbances, although both you and I think, thought, whether we said it on air or privately, were very sceptical that there really were going to be 34 or 35 or 36 disturbances. I'm with Kevin Maguire. Kevin Maguire, Scotland unlike Northern Ireland and England, has had no disturbances at all.
Yeah, the far right isn't as powerful here. There are fewer thugs. Like, Scotland's got its own problems, sectarianism. You've seen Glasgow Celtic football matches.
Say that is probably one of the most sectarian cities in the UK, Glasgow.
Yeah. But Reform didn't do as well here. They probably got about half the share of the vote they got in England. And I think the government, the Scottish government, is taking a very different tone to who had the government in Westminster for 14 years, the Conservatives, which were really sometimes not just a dog whistle on racism, but using a megaphone. You don't get that in Scotland. Scotland's got a declining population, and the country welcomes migrants.
You talk about the Tory government using a megaphone on immigration. It's the Tory government that has allowed record numbers of people to come into this country legally, far too many in my view, and allowed record numbers of people to cross the channel every month illegally.
Look, it failed its own tests, but the way it framed those tests, particularly during the dreadful period Suella Braverman was the Home Secretary, talking about an invasion and using the most hateful, poisonous, toxic, spiteful rhetoric. I'm afraid that inflames people. Now, there's no justification whatsoever for the far-right violent thuggery in burning down a citizens' advice bureau, attacking the police, attacking mosques, attacking people who are Muslims, attacking people of colour, just attacking anybody they don't like, looting shops. But we've got to be very careful about the public discourse, because we do not want to give those people any cover, any encouragement, or anything they can use to legitimise their thuggery.
Well, in the election campaign, Keir Starmer, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, Shadow Home Secretary, never gave any numbers about what they think is the optimum level of migration into this country. Is the Labour government going to try and reduce the numbers coming in? Because, Kevin, the country cannot sustain 1 million people coming in every year. That's a major city. The impact on jobs and on housing and on schools and on the NHS, let alone the social unrest it's causing.
Well, under your Brexit, I remember reducing migration was a big part of your Brexit.
If I'd been in charge of Brexit, Kevin, it would have been done completely differently.
The net migration was a record 750,000. That could be not sustained over any period of time, but it probably won't be anyway, because there won't be the Hong Kong Chinese coming in, there won't be the Ukrainians coming in, there won't be other people. And remember, most people come here to work. The social care system, which is struggling now, would collapse without people coming in.
It's just abandoned the cap on social care.
The cap, but not in terms of getting a decent wage for carers, which will attack people in a profession that has been woefully underpaid and neglected and not properly valued. But the Tories kept putting on a cap during the David Cameron era. In manifestos, 100,000 net figure, never got anywhere near it. So it's almost pointless just coming up with an arbitrary figure. I mean, it is. There's two issues. There's legal migration, and then there is also the issue of the boats. And
when are you going to smash the gangs? Smash the criminal gangs. It's so easy, apparently. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Record numbers are crossing the channel every day, Kevin. That's going to become an issue. Next week that will be an issue.
You know that will take some time, and also he's been too busy, I think, the Prime Minister and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, trying to smash the far-right thuggy gangs that have been marauding through our towns and cities.
All right, just finally, there's a Tory leadership contest going on here in Scotland. 6 candidates. They've only got 5 MPs in Westminster. It's quite a lot, isn't it, when there's 6 for the National Party? Quickly?
It's absolutely incredible how far they've gone back. They've become a sideshow, the Conservatives. It's the same as you know, across the country. 6 candidates, 121 MPs?
Can you name any of them?
Any of the candidates? Yeah, look, Jenrick.
No, I mean in Scotland.
Of course I can't. I can.
One of them's called Murdo Fraser. This is Kevin Maguire. I'm Andrew Pierce. You're listening to GB News.
1 out of 6.
We're going to have a short break.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very serious.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%. Yeah. So if I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
you'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really create so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 11:21, you're with Ben and Bev on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Andrew's in Scotland, and we're also joined by journalist and broadcaster Carol Malone and former Labour candidate Susie Stride in the studio. Welcome back.
Ladies, should we talk about Robert Jenrick, who I think has probably just scuppered his chances of being Conservative leader? What did he say, Susie?
I mean, whatever he may have said, look, I'm not a fan of Robert Jenrick for a whole lot of reasons. I can't even believe that anyone would take him seriously. You know, this man had to resign from being Secretary of State because of, you know, dodgy interactions with a donor. You know, this is only a couple of years ago, so I don't even understand why he's even on the list to be...
Well, because he's on the list. The story is that he said he's been slated for saying that he's been accused of textbook Islamophobia for saying that anyone who uses the phrase, I can't say this...
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Should be arrested. Now, I don't know why he's getting slated for that, because a lot of people have come out today, Naz Shah being one of them, who I'm not going to take lessons on racism or anything from Naz Shah, who was suspended from the Labour Party for anti-Semitism. However... she's come out and saying that this is used in their prayer. It's a phrase because
it just means God is great.
It means God is great. However, we also know that it is used just before terrorists pull the button on their suicide bombs. So you can't actually just say it's always used in the best possible terms when the phrase is abused. So this is what he's been branded. Can I say this word on television? He's been branded a tool.
A tool.
A tool.
Well, it's certainly. You can't ban somebody from saying God is great in any language.
Yeah, I think that this is where the sensitivity comes, isn't it? Look, I'm a strong Christian. I want to be able to say God is great in this country and not get in trouble for it. And I think this is where this becomes very sensitive. I think, look, when people are doing things in an intimidating way, not acceptable. When people are being violent, not acceptable. However, when it comes to people's faith, whether that's Hindu, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, I think that does become very sensitive. And I think that, becomes very tricky. And I think we don't ever want to be a country where people can't have freedom of speech. I mean, you guys just been speaking about that, before.
But isn't it the case now, though, that there are certain religions that are seen to be above any kind of criticism or any kind of queering, any kind of, Islam is one of those religions. You mentioned you're a Christian. People can slate Christianity to hell and back, but no one can say anything bad about Islam, because if you are, you're Islamophobic. And it really worries me in this country that phrase is being chucked around at anyone who dares to question Islam or the practices, who dares to say anything that can be perceived as critical. And that worries me, because this is a democracy. We live in a free country. Other religion, look what's happening to the Jewish faith as we speak in this country. It's being slated every day of every week.
You're not suggesting two-tiered treatment of religious groups, are you, Caroline?
No, I'm suggesting equality. That's what I'm suggesting, total equality across the board.
Robert Jenrick he's defended himself and pretty much apologised for saying that he said that God is great has been used as a spiritual term for many Muslims around the world, not just, as you suggested.
I didn't say I never suggested it was as that what I said was.
Well, no, I agree with you.
I think, but it is also being used by terrorism.
If you're saying it when you're detonating a bomb, the problem there is the bomb, not the words.
No, but what it suggests is that you're doing it in the name of your religion, which actually
which is terrorism, isn't it?
It's terrorism. But we heard it being shouted on the streets of this country over the past few days by some of the rioters.
Yeah, and I would absolutely defend their right to be able to.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. I don't defend the behaviour, but I'll defend their right to shout whatever nonsense they want to shout in the street, because that's the kind of country I want to live in.
People are being arrested for that, Beth. People are being arrested for what can be seen or interpreted as inflammatory language.
Yeah, you can't ban language. I'm sorry, you can't ban language.
I know you can't.
I agree with you. It's the one phrase that's been used before every terrorist attack in this country, London Bridge twice, Westminster, the Manchester Arena bombing, and on and on and on, 7/7, and all around the world. But you can't ban language. We're not like that.
Ban the language, I don't think.
What about
puberty blockers? Should we talk about that?
Yes.
Carol, what's going on? So we had the CAS report, which was very clear about the fact that puberty blockers should not be routinely given out to children.
Yes.
And it doesn't appear that that's happening.
But what is happening is this is the NHS as launching its first service for trans patients wanting to return to their original gender. So the very service that facilitated young people to change gender with the ease of a few pills and whatever, are now having to set up a service to take care of these vulnerable, disturbed people who now realise they made a terrible mistake and they want to go back to to the gender they were born. Now, to me, this is just the supreme irony, and these kids, set up on a course. Some of them operations, some of them taking untested puberty blockers. Some of them have no breasts now. They've had their had their breasts removed. Their voices have changed. They look different. And that can never be reversed now. So now the NHS, which facilitated the change of gender, is now going to set up a service to help them detransition. You couldn't make it up.
This is what happens when you use children as guinea pigs for the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just think the whole thing is completely shocking. I'm just like, where were the adults in the room? I think we've got we need to be all very grateful for J.K. Rowling and others that were very brave and called out what was disgraceful. I still want to know who were the people, whether it was at Tavistock, I can't remember.
It was the Tavistock clinic.
Who somehow pushed this through in the way that they pushed this through. How was that able to happen?
Susie, the Labour Party are still in favour of puberty blockers for children. They're also now trying to change. They want the curriculum changed in schools now, that for kids as young as 9 and younger to be taught about gender ideology. Labour are pushing for this.
Well, Wes Streeting has come out. They're against puberty blockers.
Well, Wes Streeting might be, but there are still people in the Labour Party that would favour children taking these drugs. There's a new experimental programme starting up now where kids can join the programme to experiment with these drugs to see how they work. And I mean, they should maybe have done that before they gave them to the first tranche.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, Wes is the Secretary of State for Health, so he is going to be, he is the voice on this subject for the government, and I think he's made it very, very clear. I mean, look, I work in schools. I've worked in schools for years, and I just think, we need to be very, very careful on this. I think, ultimately, a whole lot of children's lives, and all the mix of, mental health and all of this, and I think Wes is absolutely right, and I think we are going to be strong on this. I think there's going to be a very strong line.
Can you begin to imagine the mental health problems and the physical problems of these young people now who are going to have to embark on detransition. Can you begin to imagine what their lives are going to be like?
I mean, literally physical pain as well, recovering from those sorts of and reversing those sorts of operations.
Well, lots of us here, you know, when this was happening, were saying we're building up a problem for a whole generation of kids, and here we have it now.
Well, if you've gone far enough down the process, you can't reverse it. You're infertile. No. You won't enjoy sex ever again. You're stuffed, quite frankly. So maybe they should have been dealing with the problem before mutilating people.
Should we have a little light one at the end? Should we talk about ice cream, Carol? I don't know if it's still a sunny day out there.
How does the flavour red rum and raisin appeal to you? Because this is the starting in Poland. They want to make ice cream with horse's milk now, and they've done that. Exactly.
No, thank you.
It makes you wonder how whoever tested that, whoever thought that'd be a good idea. But apparently, all the scientists are saying that it's actually better for you than cow's milk, fewer allergens, much healthier for you. It says the horse's milk contains health-boosting properties, and so they want ice cream to be made of that.
Well, Susie, I guess we were all munching horse meat lasagnas for a while, weren't we, some years ago? So why not?
I mean, it doesn't sound very appealing. However, it is interesting because, you know, we were all brought up with milk, you know, drinking milk. I mean, I used to get my milk in my bottle with my blue straw in the 80s. Oh.
Yeah.
You know, just love my milk. My sister didn't like it, I had to drink hers as well. But actually, you know, milk isn't as good for you as we all thought. And actually, people in their middle ages shouldn't be drinking loads of milk. It's, you know, there's all these things.
It's so good for you.
So I'm interested to know, you know, if the horse milk is better than the cow's milk.
But it is funny how we...
I'm not saying I'm going to be eating that ice cream, I'm just going to be honest with you.
Animal protein is the best thing we can be eating, full stop. But isn't it weird that we're icky about horse milk, and yet we're not icky about cow's milk? Why is that?
Because they're kind of pets, isn't it? We see this as pets.
What we've got used to.
Is that what it is? Because they're still just four-legged farm animals.
I think it's just what we've got used to, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about dog's milk then? On that?
I mean, that's
exactly.
That is a no-no.
That's fine.
I mean, some people do eat dogs in other countries. It's very weird. But
apparently, it's better for your guts because it's got lots of fermented probiotics in it. So we should all be doing a bit more of that, shouldn't we? Right, ladies. We've got to move on. Susie and Carol, thank you so much. Right, Tatiana's waiting with your headlines. Here she is.
Thank you. The top stories. The Metropolitan Police has made 10 more arrests over the violent disorder outside Downing Street last week as officers launched raids in London this morning. Police scoured thousands of hours of footage from body-worn video, CCTV and social media to identify those responsible for fueling and committing violent behaviour. Thousands of counter-protesters rallied in cities and towns across England yesterday after a week of disorder. Several arrests were made in Croydon last night. However, gatherings that took place in North London, Bristol and Newcastle were largely peaceful, with counter-protesters chanting, "Refugees are welcome here." Police had been braced for further violence, with thousands of officers deployed and more than 100 events anticipated. Metropolitan Police Chief Sir Mark Rowley has praised police forces across the country for how they dealt with last night's unrest.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and, frankly, the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police.
Northern Ireland's First Minister Michelle O'Neill says it's important for political leaders to speak with one voice following scenes of violent disorder on the streets of Belfast. Stormont's been recalled following rioting in Belfast, which police say involves a parliamentary element. If you're watching us on television, you'll see anti-racism protesters have began gathering outside Stormont whilst that meeting takes place. 6 people have been arrested for race-related hate crimes and disorder across Belfast. There have been several arrests in recent days, including a boy as young as 14 linked to allegations of race-related hate crimes, disorder and rioting. And in other news, a special set of stamps is being issued marking the history of the Tower of London. Royal Mail has partnered with Historic Royal Palaces on the images of the 10 stamps.
The main set of stamps includes the White Tower, Tower Green and the King's House. Royal Mail says the stamps celebrate the myth and legend, ceremony and tradition of one of the most famous buildings in the world. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Patrick and Emily are here to tell us what's coming up on Good Afternoon Britain. Afternoon both, morning still.
Yeah, morning still, just about, isn't it? Yeah, we're looking forward to it today. Very weird stuff last night. Very weird stuff. There's one. It was 30 protests planned when we were on air yesterday. Then it became 100, and then they were just shouting at thin air. There was a lot of anti-fascists there. There was a lot of Palestine flags there. There was all these refugees welcome signs there. I don't know. I just find it a little bit odd, really. So we're going to be having a chat about what intelligence led up to that. You know, businesses shut, people were full of fear. You know,
there was a huge amount of fear.
Millions on police.
I mean, looking at social media, very ordinary people saying that they stayed at home because they were scared they were going to be attacked on their way to work.
And where did
you
that
had
come
businesses putting on taxis so that people got home safely, so that they wouldn't be caught up by racist bigots on the streets. None of that, well, very little of that, seemed to actually come to pass. So what was this all based on? Was it just based on one post on a Telegram website? What exactly was going on there? We're going to get some expert analysis on that.
I also think it's all very well and good for Keir Starmer and Mark Riley to come out today and be saying, oh, look, victory. Well, let's see who address the real problem about what's going on with certain things like immigration. 51% of people, I think that's the top issue in the country. You know, obviously we don't want any far-right stuff, but it's the millions and millions of other people that have got concerns. That's not what's being addressed. So that's an issue, isn't there? And we're also going to be talking a bit about quite concerning stuff involving a Taylor Swift concert, which is...
Yes, so Taylor Swift, as everyone should know by now, has been doing the most mega tour. She's added more dates, some of which were in Vienna. We now know that the police or whatever authority has foiled this ISIS plot, and so she's cancelled those dates. Now she's due to come to London very soon. Apparently the police are going to reassess the security on that one. So yes, this problem of the ISIS terror threat, Islamist terror threat, hasn't gone away, it doesn't seem.
Is there a theme here with Taylor Swift? Because of course the Southport incident was Taylor Swift-themed dance class, yoga class.
Well, some are saying that this could be that ISIS are not great fans of female power, feminism and empowerment. Could be that someone like Taylor Swift is a target, I don't know, but it could have something to do with misogyny and everything else that goes with that.
What happened with the Ariana Grande concert as well, targeting predominantly young females as well. Just quickly on one thing, I think we're about to see a wave of people detransitioning is another thing. The NHS preparing for this. I think that will be followed quite possibly by a wave of lawsuits as well. So we're going to be talking about another gender issue that's taking place.
OK.
Can't wait.
Fantastic. See you at 12 o'clock. Right, up next, we're going to be hearing from the Prime Minister. Let's see if he takes credit for restoring order on our streets. I'm guessing he will. Do you want to bet on it, Ben?
Of course he will. No. We're agreed.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A pretty overcast and muggy day today. Rain's going to spread in from the south and west, though tomorrow is looking that much brighter wherever you are. So this weather front, a warm front at first, bringing in that muggy air, will spread in from the southwest, bringing with it outbreaks of quite heavy rain at times, particularly across northwestern areas. But across western coast, the hills of Wales, the southwest, there's going to be a lot of cloud around through this afternoon, and that thicker cloud will spread up into northern areas of England, much of Scotland as well. The far northeast of Scotland staying clear of the rain through much of the day, but elsewhere risk of drizzly outbreaks of rain. Temperatures not doing too badly, but I think you'll really notice that muggier feel. Through this evening, the rain will spread up further north and east, moving into parts of northern Scotland, into the Northern Isles and the far northeast. Some heavy bursts across parts of Aberdeenshire are possible. Temperatures in the mid-teens for many of us. It's going to be a rather muggy night tonight. Lots of cloud around across Northern Ireland, across much of northern England as well. The coasts here still feeling pretty drizzly and overcast. A little bit dry across southeastern areas, but I think still there's the risk of some drizzly rain through this evening, and it's definitely going to remain quite grey. Lots of cloud overnight as well. As I said, it's going to be a very mild night, quite a close night as well. It will turn a bit fresher from the north and west as the night progresses. That's as the main weather front clears away to the south. So turning a bit fresher across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, the far north of Wales, but still that muggy feel by tomorrow morning across southern areas of England. And that will likely linger through the first few hours of Friday. Some drizzly rain possible here. But then once it does clear, it is going to be a brighter day on Friday, more in the way of sunshine, particularly as we head into the afternoon. Still, though, across many northern areas of Scotland, a bit of a breeze and a risk of some showers, but temperatures around average for the time of year. That's all for now, and I'll see you again later. Bye-bye.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's 11:40 now. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has just spoken about the counter-demonstrations that took place last night. Let's have a quick listen.
I think the fact we didn't see the disorder that was feared is because we had police deployed in numbers in the right places, giving reassurance to communities. We were able to demonstrate the criminal justice system working speedily. So yesterday you saw the sentencing of individuals who've been involved in disorder days ago, some of them getting sentences as long as 3 years. That sent a very powerful message. But I also think that the work that's being done jointly to reassure our communities is becoming more effective. Now, it's important that we don't let up here, and that's why later on today I'll have another COBRA meeting with law enforcement, with senior police officers, to make sure that we reflect on last night, but also plan for the coming days.
Things may have died down, but we have seen violent scenes and riots for the best part of a week. Looking across policing and government, would you really say that this has been a success? And what are the lessons that you've learned? What would this government do differently in the future?
The most important lesson is for those involving themselves in disorder. Because what we've seen is that those that are being arrested now, numbered in their hundreds, many have been charged, some already in court, and now a number of individuals sentenced to terms of imprisonment. That is a very important message to those involved in disorder. And I say it again, anybody involving themselves in disorder, whatever they claim as their motive, will feel the full force of the law. It's important I repeat that, because we need to make sure that in the coming days we can give the necessary reassurance to our communities, many of whom, I've been talking to some this morning, are very anxious about the situation.
If we have indeed turned a corner and seen an end to the violence, is now the time to engage with the underlying tensions that are in communities over the issue of immigration?
The first priority is safety and security of our communities. And yes, last night was much better than was expected, but we are not going to give up on our efforts here. That's why it's very important that I continue my discussions, coordinating with law enforcement, with police leaders, to make sure we've got the right officers in the right place, to keep pushing on the criminal justice response. I was very keen that we're able to demonstrate that if you're involved in disorder, within days you'll be in the criminal justice system, and some people starting long terms of imprisonment. That needs to continue, and so that is my sole focus.
Well, there you go. That's your Prime Minister telling you what he makes of events of last night. And to give him his credit, I think he is probably... There's some truth to the idea that they policed it very harshly, and I don't know how they managed to. I still cannot. No one can give me a straight answer as to how you can get that many people banged up that quickly within 24 hours, and yet people sit on the list for years not getting sentenced.
How can you police something that didn't happen? There weren't riots. It's now being widely talked about that this whole thing was a hoax. It was just a telegram message whipping up fear. How can you police something well that didn't happen? And also, he talks about justice within days. I've said again at the top of this show, the Sun front page, nailed and jailed. One protester who punched a cop in the face in Southport, jailed for 3 days within...
3 years.
3 years within days.
I think that's all right. I'm OK with that.
Yeah, but why, on the same note, why aren't the people involved, for example, in the Manchester airport assault on police officers where a young woman had her face smashed in? Why are they doing press conferences saying they're the victim? Why can't we have justice like this, deserve justice instantly, all across the board?
He skirted the question again from the reporter there, which was, will you address some people's underlying concerns and why they feel angry about the world? And all he talks about is keeping communities safe. He didn't say all communities and all people. He's totally ignoring the elephant in the room. Malcolm says, does this incompetent government believe this threat has gone away? All Starmer and Yvette Cooper have done is fuel the fire. The disenfranchised British people are angry beyond belief, and I imagine there is a strategy for the next stage. They're trumpeting the majority want mass immigration. We'll see the opposite actually is true.
Yeah, but Bev, no one cares about migration.
Yeah, look,
the Daily Mail, we're all united. Kumbaya. The Guardian.
Kumbaya.
We love uncontrolled mass migration. The Mirror, standing together. We love it all. We love it. We love migration. We love all of it.
Daily
the Liberal
Express,
agenda.
United Britain stands firm against thugs. When the press all agree on something so unanimously, your radar, your suspicion should be going off.
If you've got a concern about migration, Bev, and societal integration, you are a far-right bigot. Just remember that. You're the outlier.
Yeah, that's it.
You're the weirdo,
brilliant.
all right?
It's all about the language, isn't it? Andrew Pearce does normally call me a weirdo. Look, it's all about the language, and what they've done in the last week is make it impossible to raise genuine concerns about genuine grievances of not being able to access services in this country, because we've had, 6-7 million people come and live in this country in the last 15 years or so, less. Right, still to come, 2 men are being sentenced at Liverpool Crown Court for violent disorder and unrest after the Southport attack. We're going to bring you the latest as and when the sentence is made. This is Britain's Newsroom.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache, because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But it's certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes. You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went into Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. I mean, this is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that.
Well,
Yeah, I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now we've got
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down, but in many cases they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements, so you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes."
and she said, please, can I have an emergency appointment? I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected. She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, doesn't it, Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:49, just about. Ben and Bev with you on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. And the Olympics have, of course, been roaring on, and we've bagged a few medals. Sports broadcaster Paul Coit joins us now to give us the latest. Paul, how are we getting on?
Ben, I tell you what, we're doing good. It's bizarre that I saw you in the office about 3 hours ago, and now it's a dusky evening in the French capital. Who would have thought?
Bonjour.
Yes, the wonders of AI. Just for anybody listening on the radio, Paul seems to be sat in front of the Eiffel Tower in the background there in a Parisian landscape. Go, Paul.
It's slightly better than it was. I had Napoleon with me last week. But anyway, Matt Hudson-Smith in the 400 metres. One of our best runners. He's the fastest in the world this year, and it was a terrific race. But it was just like it was another pantomime, because we're shouting, he's behind you, he's behind you. And it was Quincy Hall from the USA, and pretty much like it was with Cole Hocker and Josh Kerr in the 1500 metres, he just came through in the last 30 metres, took the gold. So Matt Hudson-Smith, who's had just a really difficult time through personal problems, injuries, the last 2 years have been better, a terrific run. He looked really upset. There he is there. He looked really upset once he'd come through and he'd been beaten. But his demeanour seemed to change as he walked through the stadium, everybody greeting him. And then I think he realised actually what he's done, and it's won a silver medal in the Olympics.
And he was talking about the fact, Paul, that he even made a suicide attempt a couple of years ago, just after lockdowns. He was so down and just thought he'd need to quit athletics and never go back to it. What a fantastic story. Turned his life around.
Really is.
Can we just talk about the skateboarding, please? Because you mentioned it yesterday and I watched it, and it's just amazing.
How did you feel about Andy McDonald? Because Andy, we spoke about yesterday, he's the 51-year-old, and the thing is, you see him, he looks like a 51-year-old with the skateboard gear and the helmet, flipping up the skateboard, and there's all these kids around him. He ended up not qualifying. But again, I just thought it was a terrific story. I don't think he expected to win, because you see the speed of half of the kids compared to Andy, but Andy still is a skateboarding legend, and for anybody to be competing at 51, you've got to give it to him, and I've got a good feeling for him in Los Angeles in 4 years. Either that or he does the whisk drive. I'm not sure which one he's going to do.
Paul, what's coming up today and tomorrow then? Are we going to be bagging more medals?
Yes, listen, you're all about medals. I know that, Ben, and it's going to be in the velodrome. We've got the Omnium. Now, the Omnium, I'll try and explain this as quick as possible. It's kind of like the decathlon. It's a multi-event race. So there's 4 races in it. You've got the scratch race. This is the men's one, by the way. This is Ethan Hayter, who goes for us, who fell off his bike yesterday, or fell off the saddle. So we've got the scratch race, which is the first across the line. You've got the tempo race, which is points for positions after every lap. The elimination race, which is always exciting because they all go around the track. Whoever's last drops out until there's only one left. And then there's a points race at the end. So whoever has the most out of all of those 4 events, like the decathlon or the heptathlon, will be the winner. So we've got a great chance in that. And also, we've got the women's keirin, and that's where you have the motorbike takes them round.
Oh, I like that one.
It's a great one, isn't it? It started in Japan, and it's Emma Finucane again, who we had win gold, who was 21 years old. She stands a great chance of that. 6 laps. There's 3 of them. They follow the bike, which gets faster and faster. That's the electric bike. That's the motorbike. And then there's 3 laps where they just all race against them, against each other. So that is late afternoon, early evening, both of those. And I think we stand a great chance.
And we got a silver in the cycling. In the men's cycling, we got a silver yesterday, didn't we? The guy at the front, you'd have to remind me of his name, who was so tired, he literally slipped off the seat of his bike. and he just couldn't. He was just wobbling. He fell off his bike. Luckily, he stayed upright, but they just lost it. Up until that point, they were about 0.1 of a second behind.
That's it, exactly. It was Ethan Hayter, and he's the one that's going in the Omnium. So if you look at the picture there, the bottom two, they're on their saddles. I thought something had happened, he'd slipped, but you're right. He just said he'd given everything, and in that last lap, 250 metres, he just couldn't go on any further, and that was what gave Australia the gold medal. So it was a good silver, but we're wishing him well a little later this afternoon, so hopefully he can make that silver a gold.
Thank you so much, Paul. Well, I know how he feels because we've come to the end of the show. And
it's nearly night time here too. So
go and get yourself a pan au chocolat, Paul.
Merci, Ben.
Right, we are done for today. You will be back on Britain's Newsroom.
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow morning, of course, here on GB News. And up this afternoon, we've got Patrick and Emily. We'll be taking you through until 3 o'clock with Britain's Newsroom. Then, of course, it will be Martin Daubney from 3 until 6 o'clock this afternoon. But here they are. This is Patrick and Emily, and we'll say goodbye for now.
Yes, so in the last few minutes, Keir Starmer has praised Labour and the police for avoiding last night's riots, but can you guess what happened? He completely swerved a question about immigration. Do you think he really gets it?
Yes, and I don't know about you, but have you seen Rishi Sunak? He's supposedly the leader of the opposition still. We'll reveal exactly where he's been. It looks like he's having quite a nice time, I'd say, while all this is going on.
Yes, indeed. Should he not be here providing an opposition? Oh, yes, and we've got another story for you about astronauts who are stuck in space. Yes, that's right. Very concerning stuff. We'll be keeping you right up to date with all of that 12 till 3.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A pretty overcast and muggy day today. Rain's going to spread in from the south and west, though tomorrow is looking that much brighter wherever you are. So this weather front, a warm front at first, bringing in that muggy air, will spread in from the southwest, bringing with it outbreaks of quite heavy rain at times, particularly across northwestern areas. But across western coast, the hills of Wales, the southwest, there's going to be a lot of cloud around through this afternoon, and that thicker cloud will spread up into northern areas of England, much of Scotland as well. The far northeast of Scotland staying clear of the rain through much of the day, but elsewhere risk of drizzly outbreaks of rain. Temperatures not doing too badly, but I think you'll really notice that muggier feel. Through this evening, the rain will spread up further north and east, moving into parts of northern Scotland, into the Northern Isles and the far northeast. Some heavy bursts across parts of Aberdeenshire are possible. Temperatures in the mid-teens for many of us. It's going to be a rather muggy night tonight. Lots of cloud around across Northern Ireland, across much of northern England as well. The coasts here still feeling pretty drizzly and overcast. A little bit dry across southeastern areas, but I think still there's the risk of some drizzly rain through this evening, and it's definitely going to remain quite grey. Lots of cloud overnight as well. As I said, it's going to be a very mild night, quite a close night as well. It will turn a bit fresher from the north and west as the night progresses. That's as the main weather front clears away to the south. So turning a bit fresher across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, the far north of Wales, but still that muggy feel by tomorrow morning across southern areas of England. And that will likely linger through the first few hours of Friday. Some drizzly rain possible here. But then once it does clear, it is going to be a brighter day on Friday, more in the way of sunshine, particularly as we head into the afternoon. Still, though, across many northern areas of Scotland, a bit of a breeze and a risk of some showers, but temperatures around average for the time of year. That's all for now, and I'll see you again later. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers.